Today's sew-along is for a fast and easy skirt, and I've used Butterick 3460. I only made 2 slight modifications to this pattern. I omitted the front and back seams simply by folding back the seam allowance on the front and back pieces by 5/8 of an inch, and then cutting my fabric for the front and back skirt pieces on the fold instead of cutting them mirrored. Also, at the end of the project, I created buttonholes at the center front to insert my drawstring. Other than those slight changes, I've sewn the skirt following the instructions for View A. You can find this pattern at your local fabric store or online. I've left a link for you below so that you can check out all the details and sew it along with me. So cut out all your pieces, mark your notches, and let's get started. Before we attach our pieces together, let's start by doing a little bit of serging. Serge all around the entire outside of all of your 4 pockets, as well as each side seam for your front and back pieces. On each of your side seams, you have dots from your pattern piece that indicate where to place your pockets. I've marked my pocket placements here with pins. Grab one set of pockets and place each pocket right sides together with each side seam for your front piece. Match them up with your pins and pin in place. And do this for both of your pockets on both side seams for your front piece. Now we're going to take these pockets to our sewing machine and sew them in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. And repeat the same steps to attach your remaining set of pockets to your back side seams. Stitching with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now that we've attached the pockets to our side seams, place your front skirt piece right side up and lay out your pocket to the side, also right side up. And then place your back skirt piece on top of your right skirt piece, matching up your pockets on both sides. And then you can pin these side seams. And we'll also be sewing around our pockets, so pin them together as well. I've placed a pin here toward the bottom of the skirt, and I've transferred this marking from my pattern piece. It's an indicator for where I'm going to stop my stitching. Stopping our stitching here will help us form the slit later. With a 5/8 inch seam allowance, we're going to start sewing at the top of our skirt all the way down until we reach our pocket, and then we're going to sew past that pocket area by 5/8 of an inch, pivot our stitching, and continue sewing all around the pocket until we reach the side seam again. Once our stitching passes that pocket and reaches the stitching line of our skirt, we're going to pivot here and continue down with a 5/8 inch seam allowance until we reach the pin or the marking that you've transferred from your pattern to indicate where to stop your stitching for the slit. Do this sewing for both of your pockets and side seams. Now we can go ahead and hem the front skirt and the back skirt. I've gone ahead to my iron and I've pressed the bottom raw edge of my skirt to the wrong side by a 1/4 of an inch, and then I pressed it once more an additional inch. Now I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and edge stitch close to this fold from seam to seam, and I'm going to repeat the exact same steps for my back skirt. Now my front skirt and my back skirt are hemmed all the way across, and I've pressed open both of my side seams and my slits so that both sides of my slits are pressed to the inside by 5/8 of an inch on both sides. Now we're going to do rolled hems for both sides of the slits to give them a nice clean finish. Working on one slit at a time, I'm going to take the serged edge of my slit and fold it to the inside to the crease that I created with my iron. And then I'm going to fold that portion over on itself and pin in place. And I'm going to repeat those steps for the other side. I'm going to fold this side of the slit to my crease line and then roll that portion over on itself and pin in place. Then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and edge stitch close to the folded edge of my slit all the way to the top of the slit and pass that slit opening by a 1/4 of an inch, and then pivot straight across and edge stitch all the way down the other side of the slit. And do the same thing on the other side for your other side slit. Now I'm going to start preparing my top casing. We're going to form the casing at the top of our skirt, First, by preparing this raw edge in the same exact way as we did to hem the bottom of the skirt. I've gone to my ironing board and I folded the top raw edge to the wrong side by 1/4 inch, and then I pressed it an additional time by an additional 1 inch all the way around. Below the 1 inch pressed portion, I marked the center of my front skirt. Before I sew my casing, I want to apply interfacing in this section of the center of my front skirt. So when I sew buttonholes on either side of this front area for my drawstring, this area of the skirt is nice and reinforced. Our final waistband will be right here and it will be 1 inch wide. So within this 1 inch area on either side of center front, I'm going to apply small bits of leftover interfacing to the left and to the right of my chalk marking. Iron that interfacing in place. Feel free to iron this interfacing in a few layers just to make sure that this area is strong enough to support buttonholes. Now I'm going to take it to my machine and sew a buttonhole in each of these areas, and you want your buttonholes to be about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch long. Now that my buttonholes are sewn, I've gone ahead and opened up each of the holes. Now I'm ready to form my casing. So I'm going to fold down this area that's been pressed 1/4 inch and 1 inch, pin it in place all the way around. Now that the top of my skirt is pinned all the way around, I'm going to edge stitch this casing 2 separate times. First, I'm going to edge stitch along the bottom fold all the way around, leaving a gap in my stitching when I get back to where I started of about 1 inch so that I can insert my elastic. And then the second row of stitching will be all along the top of the waistband from beginning to end without leaving a gap. I've cut a piece of 3/4 inch elastic to my waist measurement, and now I'm ready to feed it through the casing at the top of my skirt. Using a safety pin, I'm going to attach it to the end of my elastic and feed it through the top of my skirt through the opening I left in my stitching all the way around. Once you've drawn the elastic all the way through and you're back at the beginning, overlap the ends of your elastic by about 1/2 inch and zigzag stitch across the opening to secure. And then pull your casing entirely through to the inside and edge stitch that opening closed following your original stitching line. And creating the drawstring tie is the very last step to our skirt. I've taken my tie to my ironing board and folded it in half the long way, right sides together, all the way across. Now I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and sew the long edge and both short edges with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And just like we did for the waistband, somewhere in the middle I'm going to leave a gap of about 1 inch so that I can turn this right side out. Then I'm going to clip both of my corners. And trim my seam allowances with about 1/4 inch remaining. Turn your tie right side out through the gap that you left in your stitching. Now my tie is turned right side out and I've given it a good press. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and top stitch my opening closed, edge stitching close to that end just as far as the opening. Using my safety pin once again attached to one side of my tie, I'm going to insert the safety pin through one of my buttonholes, then draw my tie through all the way around and out the opposite buttonhole. Now the waistband tie is all finished and we're all done with the skirt. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you check out my other videos for more great sewing inspiration, and I'll see you in the next video.